Hey there, you're listening to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, and MMA on occasion. Here's your host, RJ Carbone.
And a high drive into left center field. Stanley's going to watch another one fly. Are you kidding me? DiVincenzo a three. Bang! Bang! Knicks take a
Take this time to apologize to absolutely nobody.
At the wall. See ya! See ya! See ya! Mr. Nova.
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down and the game is tied.
Rose, you shook up the world again.
I did it again. But God did it, man. I really just have
To Brunson running away. Oh my! He has been the best player to put on that uniform.
Ball game over. Yankees win. The Yankees win.
All right. Well, a little bump in the road against the Lakers a couple of nights ago, but outside that, man, this Knicks team is really starting to find their footing again. And, they've now won 7 of 8. So the vibes remain high. And they pick up a nice win last night in Toronto, Canada. The Raptors without RJ Barrett. The Knicks still without OG Anunoby. And obviously Mitchell Robinson. But they did run 8 last night. So there was no Landry Shamet in the rotation, which I found interesting. I know the snowflakes of Twitter would rather decrease the chances of winning and play Shamet just to play 9 and give more precious rest. But I say to that, thank God he ran 8, because I would rather 8 than 9 with Landry Shamet, who, no disrespect, but I just don't see the guy as an NBA player. So in games where they run 8, I prefer that until they can find some more depth Thursday, hopefully. But the Knicks looked good last night. They looked strong at the start. Obviously, that second half was a little rough, a little sloppy, and they blow that 23-point third quarter lead. I thought the second half defense wasn't great. Some poor rotations, poor transition defense, turnovers leading to easy baskets on the other end. Very inattentive at times, but you got some big contributions. Josh Hart with some big plays at the basket in transition in the second half. He finishes with 15, 7, and 6. Precious Achiuwa had a great night. 17 and 8 for him with 5 stocks. And then, of course, the King of New York City stepped up last night, and he finished it off with some big buckets down the stretch and another big stop from Brunson, this time forcing a turnover on Scotty Barnes. And so the Knicks pull away to win this game despite a scare. They win 121-115 in Canada last night. And they remain sizzling hot. I guess, where do we want to start? It's going to be a shorter episode because they played the Raptors. We do have the Celtics up next, so that we're going to dive into that for sure. But this episode, it's a terrible team they played. There's not much to take away. There's not much at all. A 121-115 win. Jalen Brunson was the best Knick on the floor. Statistically, I guess you could say Towns was, but I always lean, when we're talking about handing out game balls, I always lean towards the guy who shows up in crunch time. And Jalen Brunson continues to do his job in the clutch. Little crunch time numbers update for you. We did it last episode. We'll do another one. In clutch situations this season, which is, for those who don't know, the last 5 minutes of a 5-point game or less, Jalen Brunson is 4th in total points. He's shooting 53% while having the 8th most attempts from the field. So he's high efficiency on high volume. And the fact that he's shooting that high of a percentage for a 6-foot guard is crazy. I mean, you look at all the other guys around him on that list, everybody else is like 40% range, and like the only couple guys who are higher field goal percentage than him in the clutch is like Nikola Jokic, who is one of the most efficient bigs of all time, a big man. He's also 5th in free throws made and 7th in free throws attempted in crunch time situations. So being the hero for the Knicks once again, 2 nights in a row And that's how this is going to work. You know, you always go to your stars down the stretch. This is how offenses work in the NBA, especially once you get into the postseason. You're going to go to your best guy. You're going to go to him. You're going to use those pick and rolls to get the switches you want. And that's exactly what Jalen Brunson continues to do when it matters. You go to your best weapon. So he finishes with 28 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 34 minutes. Getting baskets different ways, driving some Kelly Olynyk switches. You liked seeing that. And some drives in the paint. It's, with no OG Anunoby, it's been a lot tougher for Brunson to get some of those drives in the paint with more bodies down there. And that's what I want to lead into here. The spacing right now is not ideal. OG Anunoby is out. We don't know how long he's going to be out. But the longer he's out, the longer you're going to see some of these lineups where Precious and Hart share the floor, with Precious at the 4 next to Towns. And, you even saw the lineup with Precious, Hart, and Huck Porty last night, which that has to go. That can't be a lineup we continue to dive into. It is not made for the modern game. But yeah, the spacing's tough sometimes when you got Precious and Josh Hart sharing the floor, right? And you saw that last night. There were multiple times in this game where the Raptors sent early help, backside help, gap help, right? Help off of Precious and Josh to cut off Brunson drives and to force resets and kickouts when he comes off pick and roll. And that just leads to very inefficient, ugly offense late in the shot clock. Just by going with 2 or 3 non-spacers at once, what you're doing is you're allowing multiple early taggers on the roll, which is ridiculous. And I was looking at some playback and, the middle of the first quarter, possessions where Bruce Brown and that guy Shed, where Brown and Shed were helping off Precious and Hart to tag the roll together. Like, it shuts off the roll, it shuts off the drive, and it's ugly. Bruce Brown was in help to cut Brunson off multiple times, and Brunson had to, alter his decision-making because of that. And there was a possession where he runs pick and roll. Brown's in help on kind of near the nail. Brunson's about to drive, but Brown's right there, so he kind of resets and then goes to the 3-point line and has to attack a closeout. Like, it's hard to go to your offense when you don't have the spacing that you need. And I think part of this is going to be the Knicks, Tibbs, having to figure out how to utilize Precious for as long as he's here. Maybe that was his last game as a Knick. But, they're using him incorrectly when he shares the floor with Towns. I know he's a wing, but they need to use him as a big. They have to keep him away from the corner, and you want him in the dunker. right? Ideally, you want 2 corner spacers out there. That's Thibodeau offense. And you want Precious, though, not being one of those spacers. You want Precious in the dunk spot. And they went to this alignment once or twice, and there was a possession where you had that Huck Porty alley-oop, right? He gets the alley-oop off of the campaign Karl Towns pick and roll. That was with that alignment where they had 2 spacers and Precious, or whoever it was, there was a big on the floor. It was Precious or Huck near the dunk spot. And you want to space with Towns in those lineups. You want Towns spacing out on the perimeter when he's with those bigs. And when Precious is not in the dunker spot, what you want to do is screen with him, right? Because you don't want the wing switch off the pick and roll. If Towns is going to have a small or a wing on him, you don't want him screening because that's a mismatch for Brunson. And I thought when the Knicks did this and they used Precious in the action, they got good offense. There was a possession where they got Towns to drive a closeout on a mismatch for an easy finish late in the first quarter because they brought Precious into action. So I also think it's going to be important in those lineups to not only use Precious in the dunk spot so he's closer to the basket off a pass or not use him as a screen, but you also just want to, in general, stay moving and cutting. You want to be able to stay in movement. And I thought a good example of that was late third quarter. There was a possession, and this was in a Precious and Josh Hart lineup with Towns out there. Brunson's posting somebody up top on the right wing. Towns is one pass over at the top right beneath the logo. McHale comes up to Brunson to screen his defender off. Toronto brings Grady Dick up with McHale in aggressive coverage. And then the Knicks beat the aggressive coverage by having Brunson hit Towns as the outlet one pass over. Having McHale slip the screen and receive the pass from Towns on the roll. And then Precious, who was on the weak side corner with his man helping on the McHale drive, I think it was Olynyk, he cuts from the weak side corner. McHale makes the pocket pass to Precious for an easy basket. So it's the movement and the screening that you need to continue to see. And we talked about that last episode, about using screening and movement with these lineups that don't have ideal spacing. That's how you're going to figure this out. But overall, it's going to be difficult to maneuver. Without OG Anunoby's corner spacing, it's going to be tough for as long as he's out. And with Precious Achiuwa, such a tweener type player, it's tough because, Precious at the 5 is way too undersized unless you're going to switch everything. But we know that Tibbs' base defensive coverage is always going to be drop. And then Precious at the 4, well, he's an elite defensive wing, but offensively he's brutal when you use him as a spacer. So it's fine in spurts. And it's fine versus lower competition because of the defense. But you do want to avoid this in big games. Again, you got Boston coming up. You know how they're going to play the Knicks. They do a lot of switching, and they will put their big Al Horford on Josh Hart or on Precious. And you definitely want to avoid doing this in postseason games. I don't think it's going to be something you see a lot in the playoffs. Hopefully not. And the numbers do say, to be fair, that Precious and Josh Hart lineups work when you do put Cat with them because you have your elite spacing 5. Those lineups with Cat, Precious, and Hart on the season, plus 16.5 net rating, a 131 offensive rating, which is extremely elite, 62% from 2, 40% from 3 in those lineups. They have a 114 defensive rating, which is slightly below average. I wonder how much that changes when you take Towns out. And that's across 115 minutes, though. So that's key, right? For context, that's not a lot. Like the Knicks' most used 3-man lineup is almost 1,300 minutes. So the 115 minutes is key because I don't know if a lineup with Precious, Hart, and Cat is sustainable to keep having that much success. It isn't. And again, it's something that you want to keep in spurts, and Tibbs has, and it's been fine, right? For as long as OG is out, they're going to keep playing this lineup the amount of minutes they've been playing it per game, whatever. But the lineups where you have 3 non-spacers, you can't do that. That is extinct. Those are dinosaur times. We no longer live in an NBA where you can get away with things like that. And Toronto's third quarter run was a direct product of this lineup. So you need to have some shooting out there. The Towns Huck Porty lineups minus Josh Hart looked good, right? When Towns was with Huck, it looked very quality. You haven't seen this much this year. Obviously, Huck Porty hasn't gotten much time, but it worked well. And Towns was used as the spacing. Towns was used as the spacing 4 in these lineups, with Huck Porty as the 5 on both ends too. And maybe this is a preparation for Mitchell Robinson's return, if he does return and if he stays with this team past Thursday. Maybe that's what they're preparing for. You did hear the results after the game that there has been I forget what it said, but basically saying that the Knicks might keep Mitch after all. We'll see. But yeah, those Towns Huck Porty lineups are definitely different than the Towns Precious lineups, because when Towns is out there with Precious, again, Towns is the 5. But I loved what I saw from Ariel Huck Porty last night, and I want to talk a little bit more about him when we return from our first break here on episode 798 of the podcast. So stay with us. We'll be back in just a sec. BD4 is available on social media for those who want to follow. You can find BD4 on Instagram at BD4Pod. You can find us on X at BD4Pod. And you can find us on Facebook by simply searching BD4. Hey guys, just a quick reminder, this podcast is also available in video format on YouTube. So be sure to go over to the YouTube channel, BD4, subscribe, like the videos, comment, and tell me how much I suck, or maybe how much you like the video. We'd very much appreciate it. Don't have time to sit down and watch a video? You can listen to BD4 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And you can also watch the video format on Spotify too. Okay, welcome back to the show. Episode 798 of the podcast. Appreciate you all tuning in. Yeah, let's go to the bench. That second unit, Bing Bong game ball, goes to Ariel Huck Porty, who I thought he looked active last game, and then last night I thought he looked active, but he actually put up some decent numbers. 6 points, 3 for 3 from the field, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, no fouls in 19 minutes where he was a +6. So that's good. 3 game balls now in the year. That's back-to-back games where he's gotten a game ball. Yeah, the no fouls was nice to see. Complete different than what we saw in the first game, but he remained active. He looked good offensively. He made a nice pass under the basket. He had a nice catch and finish at the rim. And again, made 3 for 3. I thought he was real good defensively last night, man. I really liked what I saw from Ariel Huck Porty. Locking up Scotty Barnes. I mean, he forced a ton of misses on Barnes. Multiple times in one-on-one on an island in that mid-range post area. He forced a couple of misses on Barnes at the basket. I thought he was good. He held his own when he was switched onto him. He made some seamless switches last night. He had a good switch onto Grady Dick to force a turnover off a drive. He made good rotations. He guards the pick and roll well. We know he can hedge, but showing that he can switch too with that wingspan is very important, and continues to look good. Did taper off a bit in the second half, but who cares? I thought he provided solid minutes. And again, whatever happens Thursday, whether it's Mitch or Chua or Jericho, it could, maybe, possibly, potentially, find Huck Porty a spot in the rotation, depending on what avenue the Knicks decide to go down. So keep an eye on that. But the Knick Bigs looked good last night. Huck Porty looked good, and it was nice to see Karl Anthony Towns have a big-time bounce-back performance. I thought Karl Towns looked good last night, man. 27 points, 20 rebounds. He was working the offensive glass incredibly well last night, rebounding consistently, the second chance scoring off those rebounds all night long, putting back his own misses or teammates' misses, and that was where the majority of his offense came last night. But it was nice to see him shoot 2 for 3 from 3. Obviously, since the thumb injury, that's been something that's been bothering him from downtown. But at the top of the game, he knocked down a nice three-pointer, spacing out with Jakob Poeltl helping off of him. And then later in the game, in the fourth quarter, there was a pick-and-pop three that he knocked down with Campaign drawing help, kind of freed up Cat on the fade. So it was good to see the three-point shot fall. He was doing a nice job driving mismatches on closeouts multiple times. He went at Jakob Poeltl relentlessly to the cup. So it was a good performance from Towns. He bounced back. I didn't think the defense was as bad. So that was good to see. And that's pretty much it regarding this Raptors game. Up next for the New York Knicks, they've got the Boston Celtics. But first, they have a nice 3-day break for this trade deadline. Mitchell Robinson, Precious, and Jericho Sims are the 3 guys I think we should be looking at. You know, Mitch and Precious have the contracts that the Knicks could potentially move, and Jericho is a guy they've been trying to move for a little bit, it feels like. But they have 3 days off today, Thursday, and Friday, and then they've got Boston on Saturday night at Madison Square Garden, the only Garden, for a big test. This is the number 2 seed. It's time to prove yourselves. You know, you've beaten the number 2 seeds of the West in Houston and I think at the time Memphis. You beat Denver, who was the 4 seed of the Western Conference. You have beaten, the number 4 to 8 seeds in the East multiple times. But you have not gotten a win yet against the number 1 seed, whether it been OKC, Boston, Cleveland. And now you have a chance, because Boston's one of those teams that people think the Knicks are going to have to jump in the playoffs in order to get to that finals. And they probably will. And now you got a chance to play Boston on Saturday. You play them on opening night. No one's going to hold that against you. It's a brand new team. It took you a few months to really start gelling, but now you are. And I know you don't have OG Anunoby, but you got to use your depth, and this is a team that needs to show. The Knicks need to show that they can at least compete with Boston. And so all the positivity, all the good vibes, it's going to be tested a little bit on Saturday. Show me a win. Show me you want to be a finals favorite? You have to beat them. You want to be a finals contender? Compete with them, man. But I really want to see a win. This is a defense that is, first of all, their offense is potent as ever. When they're all going and clicking, it's difficult to stop. The drop coverage is going to be an interesting theme because they do go to the pick and pop a lot. They love those Spain pick and rolls. And then their defense, they do a lot of switching. And they're going to put their wings to Karl Towns. They're going to put Horford on Hart or Precious, and they're going to force the Knicks to have to find countermeasures. So Boston's a big game for me, man. It's the biggest game of the season by far coming up on Saturday. So that's the way I'm looking at it. Do the Knicks have a new piece entering that game? We'll see. And then after that, they've got Indiana on Tuesday. So they got a lot of downtime in the next week. So Indiana Tuesday, who they've been creeping up in the conference. I think they're right behind the Knicks now. That 4 spot has been a revolving door. You know, it was Orlando, it was Milwaukee, now it's Indiana. They're creeping up, but Boston is up next. So let's hope we can take care of them. Folks, when we get back, we're going to wrap this one up with our trivia question, and that will be that. Stay with us here in the podcast. We'll be back. If you feel like supporting the podcast, you can Venmo at Robert-Carbone-JR-28. We really appreciate your support. Do you enjoy Yankees baseball but are tired of hearing me yap? I have a suggestion for you. Go check out Yankee Crazy Podcast. Greg Gill is a Yankees podcaster on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and he's now selling merch. Go to yankeecrazy.myshopify.com. Stay connected with us. Visit BD4blog.com to explore our blog, tune in to our latest podcasts, and follow us on social media. Thank you for being a part of this community. Okay, welcome back to the show. Episode 798 of the podcast. We are going to wrap this one up right here. Quick episode. Let's do that with our trivia question to wrap it up. Okay. For this episode, our trivia question of the day. So the Knicks have tied their longest win streak versus the Raptors with 8 straight. When was the last time such streak happened? All right. The Knicks have tied their longest win streak versus the Raptors with 8 straight. When was the last time such streak happened? So let me know the answer wherever you can reach me. If you get the answer correct, I'll give you a shout out in the next show in front of all 2 of our listeners. And I will see you in the next show. We're going to try to get some more Yankees out. We'll probably have a couple more guests sometime this month, but we'll try to get some other episodes out before then too. We'll see. Camp is coming close, Yankees fans. As for the Knicks fans, I will see you after this Boston game. Now it is a Saturday night game, so I usually record the night after the game, and obviously the Super Bowl's on Sunday, so I'll get to it. You'll probably see that Boston episode out Monday. But we'll see. So I'll see you soon, Knicks fans. And I appreciate you all tuning in. Episode 798. That's it for this one. Later. Well, if you made it this far, that means you listened to or watched the entire episode. Thank you. Just remember to follow, subscribe, download, rate and review, and all that fun stuff to help out the podcast. And I will see you in the next episode of BD4.